Hey. Wait just a couple minutes here. This is the live video, the human trafficking Q&A that I've been talking about pretty much all week. And I do have some questions here, which is great. We'll start to get into that here in just a minute. Wait for a few more people to get on here. It's always the fun part about lives is the beginning, the waiting, kind of the awkward waiting. Hello, how are you? Super excited about the questions I got in for this. I'm not going to really do them in not that you know the order that I got them in, thank you. But I'm going to kind of do them in the order, starting off with just the more general questions and slowly work into the more tangible of what to do if you suspect that you're seeing someone who's being trafficked and things like that. So with human trafficking, always, the very first thing that I always highly recommend doing is go get trained in it. And trainings are usually an hour to 2 hours, and there's a lot of different variation in that because some of them go more in depth. You can start off, thanks, I'm excited too. You can start off with a very basic training, which is your kind of the Mythbusters, what it is, what it isn't, statistics, getting into that, and it kind of sets the platform. And then depending on what and how you want to get involved, you can start getting into more specialized training after that. So finding like the 1 hour what is and isn't human trafficking in your area. There's coalitions all across the United States. So that's the baseline. It's going to help break down, we see all over the internet, human trafficking, sex trafficking, usually sex trafficking because that catches people's eyes more, this and that, and it's like, but what is human trafficking? What is kidnapping? What is all of these things? What are they? How do you differentiate? How do you know what you are seeing is true, especially with social media? So let's go ahead and start. One of the questions, these go hand in hand. I got a question of what's the most common age group, and is human trafficking more common in adults or children? Statistically, cases that have come in, there are more adults who are being trafficked that we see. Labor and sex trafficking are both very high. To give an idea of why this industry keeps going and why it keeps going so strongly, is it makes more than Nike, Starbucks, and Google combined yearly, which is insane. That's big money. So people, it's a thriving business. So because people ask, well, why does this keep going? Why do traffickers traffic? Money, power, all of those things. So we have an equal adults and children, but the most common age of entry into human trafficking, even though adults statistically are higher in the cases that are reported, is ages 12 to 14 children. So they are targeting kids, and then what happens is they grow up in it, they stay in it, and then hopefully are able to be rescued out, which is a really heartbreaking way to think of someone growing up, especially a child. I can't imagine that. That just breaks my heart, thinking of a child growing up in a labor or sex trafficking situation. But that's kind of why you're going to see, even though the most common entry age is 12 to 14, adults are much higher on the statistic level. So the most at risk are going to be people with any kind of disadvantage that someone can take a hold of and use against them. I know. So we're talking about something as common as a lisp. Most likely though, we're talking about really, it is a heavy topic, I agree. We're talking about really broken families, and I mean like the drug abuse families, kids who are in the foster system, that makes up a really high percentage of it because of people who run away, kids who run away. And so those are what we're looking at. We're looking at people who, here in Ohio, part of why we're 5th in the nation now. Still, I mean, we're way up there, but we're not 4th this year. But we have a really bad drug problem in the entire state. And so we have a lot of drug addicted parents who are unable to care for their children. And when that happens, these kids, I mean, some of them, they don't have food. And I've heard stories from teachers, I think we all have, of how much our teachers invest into children with having food there for them at school. And so traffickers will look for that to pinpoint, and they can target and groom. And with social media and the internet, it is easier than ever for them to start chatting in a DM. Thank you, Emily. To start chatting in a DM and to make this kid feel valued and special and loved and wanted. And if a child feels, I mean, child, teenager, who of us doesn't crave stability? And if they don't have that and they feel that they're going to get it elsewhere because they're literally not getting it at home, they may be groomed into going over there. And grooming happens very quickly. It's very, very quick. These groomers are these traffickers, they're very, very smart, and they know what to say to manipulate someone. Also, runaways. Again, going back to kind of system and really broken homes, runaways are very high. Most kids who run away, who are picked up on the streets, end up in the system because they're told that they will get a warm place to sleep, that they'll get food to eat, for sure, that they'll get food to eat, things like that. Your basic needs will be provided for, and then they owe them for that. And so it starts this cycle. And along with that comes shame. And shame is very powerful, and it will hold people captive. And people will, they'll stay in, especially as a teenager, I think, who are able to realize or not realize what's happening, and they don't understand. They don't have the mental capability to understand. I don't think I would either, quite frankly. But they end up in the shameless cycle. Again, these people are manipulating them. They know what to say to make them feel bad. Sometimes they threaten their family. I think that even if you have really heavily drug abused parents, they're still your parents, and there's still a connection there. So there's a long list of things that they'll get into with that. Some of the more overlooked signs, which was another question. There are so many signs that can be a trafficking sign that, again, it's super important to go get some education done. Because anything from, okay, we're going to put this in a hairstylist kind of setting. Someone comes, sits in your chair, and they just are very disconnected. And we as stylists, we are good at picking up body language, right? Like, we know when something's going on, but they're just kind of disconnected. Often they won't want to make eye contact. They don't speak very often. Someone comes with them. This is a really heartbreaking point. This is where it can get hard. Trafficking people can be their family members, and that does happen, and it's happening more often that parents or aunts or uncles or cousins are trafficking them out. And so it could be their mom who's saying, this is what their hair needs to be. But it could be a boyfriend as well. A boyfriend is very, very common. And so they have the say in what their hair is going to be. What's going on? You combine that with they just don't really talk. They may not know where they are. They may be drugged. Again, we've got a long list of things that could be potential signs. Here's what's cool, because another question was what to do if you suspect it. As a cosmetologist, we have a very, very, very unique opportunity. We can separate the client, aka potential victim, from their potential trafficker. Potential is very important. We do not know until we know. But if you are highly suspecting that something is going on and you feel that you need to say something, you have the opportunity to ask whoever came with them, I'm very sorry, due to the chemicals and the hot tools around here, could you please go wait in the waiting area? Who else can do that, right? That will give you an opportunity to then ask your client, are you safe? Do you know where you are? Do you know that person? They might lie, or they may tell the truth. If they say that they are not safe, you need to call the cops, but be sneaky about it. Do it when you're mixing color. Come up with a safe word with your coworkers, if you guys are there, that if you say something like, what's really hot in here, can we kick up the AC, they know that that means that they need to go call the cops because something's going on. So we have such a unique opportunity in that area that we are able to separate them, because that's one of the biggest steps. There is a side to this that they may not think that they are in danger or realize that they are in danger because they have been so effectively groomed, and that is very, very hard. You are also able to always call or text into the National Human Trafficking Hotline. You can send in tips of things that are suspected. They will ask you if you heard or saw anything that made you believe that directly. If you didn't, they're not always able to really get into it, but if you saw something that really made you think like, okay, something's going on. Other signs that you could see that are very unique to cosmetologists, we're going to see bruising along the head, the back of the neck, if hair's missing, any cuts, track marks from drugs, tattoos. There is such a thing as branding. It's kind of going down a little bit, but there are still very specific tattoos that they will use to mark their girls. And one of the more common areas is right back in here. Hair covers it. Can't see it from the front, can't see it from the back. But when we move their hair, we may think, oh, it's another tattoo. But to them, that's their ownership sign. So there's a lot of signs, a lot. But when you combine a whole bunch of them together, you may have a situation. You can also put stickers up in the bathroom. If you have a unisex bathroom, it's fine. Male, female bathroom, put it in both. But sometimes traffickers will go check the bathrooms to make sure to see if you have those stickers or not. It's not a bad idea to put them in anyway, because I don't know that they always do that. But it's trafficking. Are you safe? Do you need help? If you live in South Carolina, I'm sure you've seen them everywhere. South Carolina is the most proactive state in the U.S. for anti-human trafficking, which is amazing. Another little fun fact, the U.S. is one of the top 3 nations for human trafficking. Again, money. There's so much. If you have any questions too, feel free to throw them at me. I could talk about this for a long time. One of the other questions I got was, when did I first learn? And seriously, feel free to throw questions while I'm talking about this. Yeah, Utah's big. Let me see where Utah is actually. I've got my computer up here with all my statistics. Utah's down there. Utah's way down, actually. Utah only had 76 cases reported in 2018. That's amazing. Good job, guys. Yeah, Utah only had 76 versus, California had over 1,000. Texas had 1,000. Florida and New York are as high. Texas kicked Ohio out. We're at 443. So yeah, Utah's way down there. You guys are good. Part of why is because you don't have super close border access, and you don't have a lot of really main highways going through. So to explain why Ohio, because we kind of seem like a weird state to be so high, it's because we have the main highways go through. We have 75 and 70, so north, south, east, west, and then we have 75, 80 up north of here. So again, same thing. We were 5th highest in the nation for strip clubs. I don't know if that's true after the tornadoes took out quite a few. We had And quite a few of those strip clubs kept getting dinged for human trafficking too. But we're allowed to stay open, so if you see a legal flaw there, you are correct. We have close access to get out of the country into Canada if traffickers needed to, because they're coming under heat, and it's just easy to hide. So that's why Ohio is a higher state. So yeah, Utah, you are, I had to scroll a few times, so you guys are good. I mean, not good. Every state has human trafficking, but you're way low. So back to when did I first learn about human trafficking? It was 12 years ago, almost 13 now. I went to human trafficking. Part of why it's such an issue here too is it didn't have a name in the United States until the year 2000. It didn't exist. Mind blowing. Even though everyone knew that things were happening, it did not exist in the United States until the year 2000, which is so crazy to me. So 12 years ago when I went to my first training, it was one of the, thank you, Wella, for everything that you are doing. It was one of the first trainings in our area, and a friend had invited me, and she was like, you want to come? Sure. So I went. I had no idea what human trafficking was. I never heard of it. And the woman who spoke, her name was Teresa Flores, and she is a survivor, and she's still extremely active here in Ohio. She does something called the SOAP Project, which is super cool. You should look into it. And she was a survivor and talking about how she was groomed, and she was one of the cases that had a good family, but she had an older boyfriend, and that older boyfriend trafficked her. And he did sex traffic her, and the shame and everything kept her in the system. And my heart it broke. It shattered. And then the justice side of me was like, well, what can we do? Because there has to be something that we can do about it. And so I remember I would just kind of talk about it. I'm someone who likes to talk about deep things. So I would be like, have you ever heard of this? Do you know what this is? And most of the time I would be like, oh, that doesn't happen around here. I'm from a really small town. Everybody knows everybody. And then I would get, my jobs were a lot of coffee shops. I worked in a couple coffee shops for a long time, and they had fair trade coffee. Coffee is one of the top labor trafficked items, coffee and chocolate. And so people would ask, what is fair trade coffee? Why do you have it? Why is your coffee more expensive? And we would explain that. And so it kind of kept in the back of my mind, everything I did involved human trafficking in some way, shape, or form. My very first job, I worked at a leadership camp, and we worked with inner city kids. And looking back, I'm like, I think I think I came across some then, but I hadn't had deeper education yet to really know what to do. And so I don't know. It's always followed me, and it's so deeply rooted into my heart. And then I realized last year, if you've been following me for over a year, you may remember that last November I had this wake-up call where all of a sudden I was like, we could do something about this as cosmetologists, because we have, especially in schools and in chain salons, because they're easy to get in and out of. Easy to get in and out of, and you can use false names and things like that, and they're cheap, which is a big thing. So if someone were to use that in a grooming process, I agree, and it's kind of a scary thought. We see so much, and we know, got a little derailed there, sorry. And we know when something's kind of off, and we have just this opportunity that we're letting go to waste. And it doesn't mean that we're a therapist, because we can text a number if we suspect something's wrong. We can text someone, it's a phone call. We're not there to counsel them, anything like that. It's just being educated so that when someone sits down in your chair that may be off, you'll know. Or if you were like me, I ended up opening up my own suite. Granted, I was only in there for 4.5 weeks, but I had my own suite, and before that I was in a really nice salon that is a phenomenal salon, but the chances of someone coming through as a victim were super, super low. There was not a high chance that would happen. especially in this area, our demographic. But who are my clients? They were teachers, they were nurses, they were moms. Those were people who were most likely going to come into contact with it. And all of my clients knew that this is what I was passionate about. This has just like always been one of the biggest things in my life that I've really focused on. And so for the fact that they knew that, they would ask me almost all of my conversations. At some point, something about human trafficking would come into play. Why is it different here? In the US, I watch Taken, and then I'm always like, yeah, we gotta talk, because it's not like that. Yes. Yeah, and so exactly. So, and as a mother standpoint too, so my teachers, nurses, and then with the moms, there were a few different things, and often we would talk about fear of their children being trafficked. That is a very valid fear. Very valid. I will never ever deny that. But if you have open conversations with your children and you have a good relationship with them and you're aware of who their friends are, most likely you're going to be okay. And yeah, yes, adults will use children. Sometimes that's more for kidnapping though than human trafficking. So kidnapping and human trafficking are very different. Normally a human trafficking case is a grooming case and not a kidnapping. Kidnapping is horrible, evil, violent, 100%. Not normally for use of trafficking though, because they want to have that control, and a kid who might be kidnapped is probably going to scream. I think we've all been taught, I was taught, someone tries to grab you, yell. So it's very, I remember having a lot of conversations, and I still do, about that, of just, if you are invested, and two, also, if that's a fear that you have, I'm going to say you're a really good mom, and you're already invested in your kids. But they might see someone, especially if they go to a public school, things like that. And so that's where talking to moms was like, oh, Taken is a huge misinterpretation. I will get to that in a moment. So, it's my least favorite. I don't really watch movies anyway, but that's my least favorite movie. But was just like, the biggest thing is, it's when these kids don't have your basic needs and stabilities, that's when they're much higher at risk for that. Much, much higher. Okay, so Taken. Let's get into this. Taken is, now I will give Taken this, she's overseas when she gets kidnapped. There is a chance of that. Kidnapping in the US, it just doesn't, not for trafficking, it doesn't really happen. But when people watch Taken, yes, yeah, overseas, but still not in the US. Because people who groom know what the culture is, and they look for that. So most likely, to be very, very blunt, if you get kidnapped in the United States, you will most likely end up raped and dead. Be very blunt. If you are not found, that is most likely what's going to happen. Versus trafficking, they want to make a profit off of you. So we've got two different kinds of evil mindsets. Same with foreigners in the US. They're going to know if they want to traffic, traffickers want to make money and have power. And so they can't make money off of you if you're not alive. And they can't control you if you're not alive. So if someone is coming in and they are looking to traffic you, they will know what the culture is here and how to groom still to traffic you, to make money off of you. Does that make sense? If someone is coming in and it doesn't matter the ethnicity and they are kidnapping, it's a different kind of evil. I hope that makes sense as to why those two things are kind of different. So overseas, what happens a lot is that you have cultures, Thailand's very big for this, is that they will sell their children into trafficking to make money to live. And that's a whole nother ballgame when we're getting into that. Also, with human trafficking in the United States, human trafficking is not smuggling people. Often it happens within their own home or in a grooming situation. And so it's not quite the same on that end. You don't have to take someone across the border. If you take someone across the border, that's human smuggling, not human trafficking. Does that all make sense? I'm hoping it does. Hey, Casey. So I hope that all makes sense on that end. Taken also goes through the violence, the ransom notes, all of those things, and is a portrayal of trafficking on that end. But that doesn't normally happen. That makes sense. Foreigners would be considered someone who's at a higher vulnerability if they have a hard time with things in the U.S., but it depends on again, there's so many different things that can go into it. I wondered when you sent that if you'd come across something. So they are someone who are different ethnicities are considered more at a higher vulnerability. Salons and day spas are the number one spot for trafficking in the U.S. And it's because, it tends to be a little bit more on an adult side because people get a promise of a better life and they're brought in, and then they cannot make enough money to pay back what their travel expenses were because they keep them under such low wages. And then to, make up for it, then they'll have to start doing, the illegal massage parlors, things like that. So it's hard. It is really hard sometimes to make a clear call about, is this a bad situation? Watch the body language of the people who come in with them. Sometimes that's more telling than the person sitting in your chair. If someone is a very high controlling person and they just are very rough, and if that little girl acted like she didn't really know who they were or trust them or anything like that, you might be looking more into that kind of a situation. But back to Taken. So it shows ransom notes, all these calls, all these things, right? Doesn't happen. That's not realistic for what happens here in the U.S. Taken is almost a better portrayal, minus like the trafficking aspect of it, of what a kidnapping situation might be here, but it is. Oh, that movie. Can you tell? I really love that movie. So much. Oh, she was an adult, but he left her alone. 50-50. Yeah, in that situation, especially if you had that gut feeling that something was really bad, like I am a trust your gut kind of person, you could have called your local police, or you could have called the hotline, and too with the hotline, or you could text them, because if you text 233-733, that connects you immediately with they're going to ask if you're safe, if you're able to talk, and then you can send them, and they can walk you through kind of what to say if you're really unsure of what's going on. So again, that number to text is 233-733. Save it in your phone under the national hotline. It makes it so much easier. I highly recommend doing that. You never know. You just don't. Do we have any other questions? So that I could really go on about this for a long time. So if you think, 233-733. Here, I'll pin that on here right now, actually. Number to text. This is weird to do. So if you think, whoops, my bad. So if you think that you might have someone in your chair who may be trafficked, first things first, separate them from the person who came with them. Like I said earlier, just the whole, sorry, due to hot tools, chemicals, whatever it may be. And two, if you do work in a salon setting, I would have this conversation, do a salon training if you're able to, and know that if you hear someone saying that you need to enforce that with your other guests just in case, and just kind of explain you know what she's doing. We can't really have extra people on the floor right now, and just make it seem very normal and casual, because you don't want to have like one person sitting out in the waiting room and everyone else kind of chilling back there, because they'll know something's up. But first thing would be to separate, and then your very first question, and you may have to wait, depending on how your salon's set up, you may have to wait till you're back at the shampoo bowl, or hey, come to the back with me to pick out these colors, things like that, you know, to look at these colors, any of those things. And then when you have them where the trafficker is out of ear and eye shot, ask, are you safe? And based on how they answer that, you can go into, you know, oh, so how do you know them? Or how long have you guys been together? You know, those kinds of questions, things that are not going to also set off. You've already asked if they're safe. That is a big question that's going to set off alarms, but you don't want to frighten them either, if that makes sense. And you can make a do you feel safe kind of question semi-casual. But then if they say yes, but you still have a bad feeling, you can ask the questions, okay, you know, I just want to make sure, and then come up with some answer. So here's another thing about human trafficking. I think in general, in general, we see human trafficking as street prostitution, dirty motels, things like that, right? Yeah, no. That's a very common, like, that's what our minds go to. The reality is that it is like high level, so they normally start them off at very, very high level, and then you have your mid, so we're talking like the online groups. What do you mean by in debt? So I'm talking about we're talking about high-end prostitution, like ones that you have to get a call service for. And then it trickles down as age, drugs, anything like that come into play, because they will drug them to keep them addicted and dependent on them. And then it trickles down into street prostitution. That is the lowest level. That's like your bottom of the barrel, unfortunately, is the way we usually word it, of it. So at this level, they have to look good, right? You're dealing with really, really high-end clients up here, so they have an image to maintain, or they will get them their hair done, nails done, whatever done to fit what the client wants. And so that's one area that we may see people come through. We may see on a school side, if you're a teacher at a school or if you're a student, you may see people come through during a grooming process, because they will use that as a way to lure them in. Because if someone's coming from poverty, they don't know that a $12, $15 haircut is dirt cheap, if that. So that would be more the grooming services. So like that part I just said with that, they'll do that, but they would give services more to victims either on that end or on the to keep them looking good. And so it's not always their choice to get their hair done, or makeup or whatever is getting done. We are talking high end, the people you don't want to think about, Epstein level clients. They want a specific look. They want this or that. They need to keep them looking, not pointing myself, but looking good. They can be extremely looking high end and yet under the influence of drugs, because that keeps them entrapped. They can be, sometimes it's hard to see. So street level prostitution, which is where we kind of think it's at the bottom, both labor and sex. Yep. Happy ending massages. So with that, we see a little bit more of a different ethnicity group coming in, though. And those are of a promise of a better life. All of those kinds of things. But they are salons and spas. Number one spot for trafficking in the U.S. on both sides. But yeah, it's amazing how it's so normal to us. And so say girlfriend, boyfriend come in, and they, the boyfriend's very, very, Underground Railroad is great. It's a great group. But boyfriend, girlfriend come in. He has a lot to say about her hair. We may think, oh, it's, the typical over-controlling boyfriend kind of thing, like, girl, find yourself someone better. But what might actually be happening is he's pimping her out. And so he has a specific way she needs to look. So knowing the signs are so important. Underground Railroad is amazing. They're wonderful. They work a lot worldwide as well. And so that's where you're going to see them going in, grabbing them off the streets. Some parts of California on street level prostitution, you're going to see some more of that happening. It gets tricky because if someone is closer to 18, the closer someone is to adult, the less likely they're going to be convicted or not. They'll be convicted for prostitution over being freed and recognized as a trafficking survivor. But yeah, Underground Railroad. I love Underground Railroad. They're great. They're wonderful. They are phenomenal. And I love what they do. I love everything about them. The Polaris Human Trafficking Hotline.org. Let me double check that. I believe it's .org. Yep. Human Trafficking Hotline.org is fantastic for finding your statistics. They have any and every question and answer you could pretty much imagine on there. But there's, things like Underground Railroad, you're looking at a more worldwide view. And one other group that's really cool, there's a few, but there's one, I can't remember the name of it, I'll have to look it up. But they do stings for, the Super Bowl and the Olympics and the Arnold in Columbus. Those are three of the top human trafficking. Those are the top 3 human trafficking moments because it brings in so many people from outside. And so they have stings operating all night long, and they usually arrest a ton of people who are looking to hire as well as pimps. And I will look that up and I will post that later on tonight. Organizations and resources, humantraffickinghotline.org and Polaris Project. PolarisProject.org. PolarisProject.org is going to connect you with people in your coalitions in your area who will provide training. And that's going to be your kind of one-stop shop for all of that kind of information. Polaris Project and Human Trafficking Hotline are the same organization. They just have 2 different websites to kind of make it easier to divide up and focus in on what you're looking for. Yeah, they are fantastic. Feel like at the moment it's about all that I can think of, unless we have any more questions at all. I'm skimming over the different groups here. I would take a look at statistics, and you can look up statistics in your state too. So I've got Utah people on here right now. Let's look at Utah. Utah's highest was escort services. That's interesting. So across the U.S., it's going to be massage spas and salons, but in Utah, it was escort services. You've had 9. More females than males, very normal. Most of them were reported through a tip found online, and their contact was either a victim or a community member who saw, and those were very close. So if you separate them, do it in a very casual way. Do not make it a big deal. Very, very casual. I think that fear is a healthy thing. Fear can be healthy, and I understand having fear with that. I've seen things firsthand. Ooh, I'll look up Texas. Texas is 3rd in the nation right now. You have close border access, that's why. So if you call the police, and as nerve-wracking, gut-wrenching, heart-stopping of a phone call that may be, act normal. Put your acting face on. Go about everything like it's normal and it's casual. Do not make a big deal of it. You don't want to tip them off into thinking that something's off or that you may be onto them, the trafficker. So that is where you want to go with that. It's scary. But again, I think it's a healthy thing in that moment too, because it's going to help keep you alert and protected. No. Not unless you have a stylist who, you would know. Like, if that weirdo slides into your DMs and is saying things, like, that's not going to happen. So grooming is when someone is talking to you, trying to offer you things, they're trying to offer you a better life than what you have. Grooming, that's what grooming is. It is very quick. They prey on very high vulnerable people. That's what they're focused on, which is why kids are in it. Yeah, like I said, there's so many misconceptions out there. So many misconceptions about it. People are not going to like walk into your salon and be like, oh, hey girl. Like, that's not really gonna happen. So grooming happens with, like, now if you have a stylist who's super a drug addict and is looking for their next high all the time and is desperate, one, they're probably not working in a salon or as a stylist, and two, yeah, they would be susceptible to it. But no, it's not common. So you were correct. Texas had salons and spas, hotel and motel based. Those were your highest venues and industries. Hotels now do a lot of training for human trafficking and what to look at. No, please, I love the questions. I love them. So, sorry, that's my dog coughing in the background. She has chronic bronchitis. So, hotel, motel based, hotels have to have training now. Different ones like require it. And it's because, again, we're talking about really high-end clients. They're going to go to a high-end hotel. They're going to make it fancy. So they have training. That's why hotels are kind of high, though, and I'm sure Texas is going to start changing that, because they've been pretty on top of education in the last couple years. They've been really, really pushing education. Let's see how many. 661 females, 121 males. Pretty much equal on if they were citizen or formal. Yes, I will get to donating for sure. So Texas, you had 2,312 contacts. So here's my thing. This is what I think happened. So Ohio has been 4th in the nation we flipped between 3rd and 4th, and we bumped onto 5th, and Texas came flying up. People learned because Texas has had such a high push, and I think because Texas has had such a high push in proper education, which is, what my goal is here right now, in proper education, that people begin reporting tips more, which actually makes your community a safer place, because when people know what to look for and they know what to call in, and again, you're close to a border, there are a lot of, open places, it makes you a hot spot for it. But when people know what to look for and they're making those phone calls in, those tips are going to go up higher, but it's making your area safer at the same time, because they are able to then build cases and get those people off of the streets. They're able to rehabilitate women, and they're able to get rid of the traffickers, right? On one hand, it's daunting. It's horrible to see your state at such a high number. I get it. I'm up there. Ohio's up there too. But on the flip side, if you know that it's because people are aware of what to look for and are taking action, knowledge is power. Exactly. You can be a part of stopping it and changing to where your state maybe is as lower than where Utah is. It's one of those things. So Wella asking how to donate. Go to Wella Education's page, click on the link in their bio, and you can help support Polaris. This is one of the base levels that you can also take action. Polaris is one of the top stops in the nation for support and education and for rehabilitation. They have every resource you could imagine. They are phenomenal. Sending in donations to them, they are a nonprofit. That's a huge huge help. So that is how you could go donate and help support stopping human trafficking. It's fantastic. And then after you donate, go over to their resources, find your state, find a coalition, and get education. And from there, you choose how much you want to be involved. If you want to be involved on an education, talking to your clients and donation level, that's amazing. And it's the ripple effect, right? Proper knowledge gives power. It's got to be the proper knowledge. Don't want to accidentally spread false information around. And then too, you're helping create change by not sharing these posts that we see on Facebook or Instagram. They say, sex trafficking is everywhere, here's what to look for, and then you get a whole big description of kidnapping things, right? So you have a power to help stop the false information from being spread. Thanks, girl. You could get involved with working with the coalitions as well. If that's something that you feel that you want to get into, you can go do their hair. You can offer to help teach people, and especially there's a really huge gap all around for rehabilitation services, but you can offer to help show them how to do their hair and makeup and restore some of their confidence. It can be really hard. I know firsthand. It's amazing. The strength that these girls and these women have is unbelievable, but it's very heartbreaking as well. Make sure you get some deeper education beforehand if you want to get into that. There's education about the psychology of how their minds work after being through so much trauma, and it's specifically for them, so I highly recommend doing that if you begin to want to get into that level. Have fair trade products available at your salon, so the coffee that you buy, if you offer your guests coffee, if it's fair trade, you're going to help stop labor trafficking worldwide. Same with the coffee you drink at home. Chocolate, same thing, fair trade chocolate. There's just a huge long list of things that we could do that are simple, everyday things from, you start off with just learning about it, and then you just start buying fair trade coffee. And maybe one of your clients will ask, why is this coffee so good? Because it is good coffee. And you can explain, oh, it's this fair trade coffee, this is why I got. And almost always the question following up is going to be, what's fair trade, why fair trade? You can get into that. Having the stickers on your mirror, things like this. There's so many simple things we can do that we can all join in and help stop what's happening, help greatly diminish it. People ask often, do you think that human trafficking will be eradicated in your lifetime? And I truly don't, because it is a worldwide problem. Do I think that we can greatly diminish it and make the United States a non-desirable place for this to happen? Yeah, that I do. But in order to do that, we got to start having the hard conversations. We've got to start having those hard classes and mentally prepare yourself too, because it's gut-wrenching, but don't fear the gut-wrenching parts of it. Don't fear that. Hold on to it to a degree so that you keep that empathy and also that drive to help stop it, but don't let it eat you alive. It's an easy topic, I think, to kind of get tumbled down into, to where we feel helpless. But like I just said, we have some super simple ways that we can help, and they don't take a ton of effort. They truly don't. And you can just help stop what's going on. So, if there's any other questions, let me know. I will finish off with the top 5 states in the nation. Well, I'll do the top 10, because the top 10 are kind of interesting. California, Texas, Florida, New York, Ohio, Michigan, Georgia, Nevada, Illinois. And North Carolina comes down at 10. It's kind of a funny range, isn't it? Yeah, believe you can make a difference, because you can. You truly can. And yeah, it's, like I said, it's heavy, it's hard, it's heartbreaking. It really is. But if we have the knowledge of what's going on, if we are aware that something is happening and we do nothing at all, we're encouraging it. And that really is what it comes down to. If we do nothing at all, because it is so hard, and it is hard, but if we choose to ignore it, pretend like it doesn't exist, we're encouraging it and allowing it to happen in our communities. And then one day something may happen and we ask why, and we have to look in the mirror at that point. So by choosing to take the knowledge that you have and move forward, you help stop it and you help change it in your community. It's a really powerful thing. Feel free to always message me at any point in time. I'm going to save this, put it on my IGTV. Any questions, anything, Wella, same thing. You can get a hold of them. You, like I said, go through their account to donate 100%. We can't wait for someone else to do something when we do have the capabilities. So donating through Wella, that's a huge help. Like I said, go to Wella Education, click on the link in their bio, and learn about it. Go to humantraffickinghotline.org, click on statistics. You can go specifically to your state. You can go to myths and facts. There's so much information on there. It's amazing. I know I've repeated myself a few times. Thank you for bearing with me on that. And yes, we'll talk soon. And if you like this live, let me know, because we will do more in the future. Have a great day and happy Thanksgiving week.